Hey everyone, it's Sam Mutari here, and welcome to another episode of Sam Talks About Twitch. I mean, obviously everybody knows at this point that I am a religious follower of Twitch Plays Pokemon, and I have been for quite some time. Ooh, English is so hard today. So basically I came into Twitch around Crystal, not Crystal, blah, blah, blah. Actually, yeah, that's true. Twitch started with Red version and then went on to Crystal after that, and I came in around the end of Crystal, where basically our character was getting the other 8 badges, and I only saw around the time where everybody was like, we gotta beat Misty, guys! And then after that I stopped watching until they started playing Emerald, and Emerald was where I basically came into the whole thing, and I really got addicted to it, and I started really paying attention. Now, I've already said this about 1 billion times, and I'll say it 1 billion times more. The reason why I love Twitch Plays Pokemon is because the stories that people come up with, it's not about, you know, just the game itself. Because I've played Pokemon, so watching someone else play Pokemon is actually pretty boring, and watching 1,000 computers try and play Pokemon, it's almost like playing a rage game. And the whole time you're watching, you're just wanting to scream at these people because they're doing such stupid things, and you're just like, work together, teamwork, do something, go inside here, your Pokemon are dying, you're losing, blah. You know, when they're sitting there running into the same boulder for 18 hours because they can't figure out Rock Smash, you know, they can't work and coordinate to do this. Or whenever you have a Pokemon that's not evolving because you have bots pressing B, you're sitting there and you're like, ah! And every time they kill a shiny or they catch a common Pokemon with a Master Ball, you're just like, why? You know, and every time they play with the PC and they release a Pokemon that you need or that you could use or that's really good, you're just like, ah! You know? So this is basically the Twitch experience, and so you do kind of watch Twitch for those moments where you're like, why? Because it's kind of like an adrenaline rush. But mostly I watch Twitch because if you follow the subreddit, or if you follow any of the other places like DeviantArt or blah, which may have places for Twitch Plays Pokemon, the stuff that people come up with is just amazing. Like this little bit that's in the video here that says, I firmly believe the voices are from the distortion world. It's a world of chaos befitting the voices, you know, nature. What is Giratina, you ask? Giratina is the voices that left Twitch Plays Pokemon after Red in physical form. So basically, like, the community itself comes up with all these amazing things. And I'm not just making it up. Basically, okay, so there are 1 billion stories of how Twitch functions, what it is, what it does, blah. But the main thing is that Twitch is run by the voices. Basically, the voices are the people who are inputting the commands and playing the game. Okay, so they are just known as the voices. And these voices come to chosen children because they are here to change the world. Now, the story has changed, I mean, throughout the years. At first, the voices were here to stop Dome, which was the evil fossil, which was the embodiment of all evil, because Helix was the Lord. And then after the Dome, we found out that Dome wasn't necessarily the bad guy, because Dome is part of balance, but that there is a bad guy, that bad guy's Bill. The PC Master, because at first he was working for Dome, but then he started his own, like, evil deed and blah, and he became a bad guy because he was murdering innocent Pokemon for his own sick pleasure, and using the voices, and using the PC to trap the voices, blah, and trick them, and he's always rooting for your character's failure. Well, then we realized in the randomized FireRed, or Leaf Green, yeah, we played FireRed. The randomized FireRed, that, you know, the character that got the voices was actually Bill's daughter, and she was in a coma, and, like, he was just trying to bring her back, or something like that. I don't know. Like I said, there's, like, 1 billion stories. People have 1 billion different versions of what's going on, but the thing that fascinates me most is I love it when people can connect previous experiences to current ones. The thing that I liked about Platinum, one of the things, was how they had Lynette, not really, I don't think it was Lynette, it might have been Lynette, but one of the PC people that basically made the storage system easier to use became fascinated in the voices, and she wanted to study them because she thought it was a mental disease. And so she was doing all these experiments with the kid in Sinnoh, which was our character Napoleon, aka Nipple. So basically she was doing all these experiments by having Cynthia give Napoleon these Pokemon, like the Togepi and the Eevee, and, you know, just everything in general, and it just caused all this uproar because we found out that she found out that the voices weren't a mental disease, that it was this ancient phenomenon that only happened to certain people, and there's stereotypes that surround the TPP universe, and, okay, like, Flareon. Actually, the thing that I liked in this playthrough, about Platinum was that we actually got to keep a fire Pokemon for once. Basically, we started out with a Chimchar, and it was a female Chimchar, and everybody was like really happy because we're like, oh yeah, hell yeah, Infernape's awesome. Well, Chimchar was released. Chimchar was released, which meant Chimchar was practically murdered, and yeah, and that set off a whole thing of, oh my god, we can never have fire Pokemon, because if you look through all of, TPP's listing, we really don't have any fire Pokemon. They never stick around, they're always released. Abby from Red was released, I forget who was released, the False Prophet, I believe, was released from Red also, but I forget. There was also, there was also a fire Pokemon, I believe, to be released in Crystal playthrough. I know that in Emerald, we released, who did we release? That was a fire type. I forget. We released someone, and I was like, no, why? Why would you do that? Oh yeah, our Torchic, Zexy, duh. Zexy, the Torchic, who we never allowed to evolve, even though he was level 36, because bots wouldn't let him. He was released, which was really sad, because everybody loves Zexy, but that came into play later in a really cool plotline with Shedinja and stuff. And then in FireRed, we also released another fire Pokemon. I don't think we did, because I don't think we had one since everything was randomized. And now in Platinum, we actually got a Flareon, and everybody's like, oh, Return of the False Prophet, ah! So there you go, it's Platinum going back into Red. Everybody's like, oh, the Return of the False Prophet, and our Solarion, as we called him, ended up actually staying in our party and actually helping us defeat the Elite Four, destroying the stereotype that TPP cannot keep a fire Pokemon worth a damn. So that was actually really exciting. But no, the thing that I actually liked most about this whole playthrough is that, basically, I don't even know how to explain it. It's just, basically, I'm used to Emerald, and in Emerald we focus so much on the Pokemon themselves and creating stories around them as if they were people, with our M4 and our 5-7 and Bird Cop and blah. We focus so much on that really we kind of moved away from the character, and that was nice, that was enchanting. And then in Fire Red, everything kind of got jumbled. Sometimes we were focusing on the Pokemon, actually a lot of the time we were focusing on the Pokemon and their, like, communistic personalities, I guess. So in Emerald and in Fire Red, we focused really heavily on the Pokemon lore, not so much the trainer lore itself, but just about our team. And we kind of made them into, like, people, or made them gave them personalities like they were people, and basically every story basically just revolved around them. And I mean, like I said, it was nice and it was really enchanting. It was very creative, but in Fire Red we had a little bit more backstory about the actual trainer than we did in Emerald. But even still, the trainer information kind of got shadowed over by the lore that was created for the Pokemon themselves. And of course in Emerald we had the canon between Zexy and M4, and then Zexy got murdered and M4 went crazy. And then she started to like private Minun, and then Minun of course got captured, and that caused a problem too. And so that was really cool. And then in Fire Red I don't think we had any canons going. But it was still heavily based in freaking communistic stuff, and of course it had our Mew in it, and it was all exciting for people. The freaking old Amber ended up being a Charizard, which gave us all our Altarion, and I don't know, it was all really exciting. But this is going into past Twitch Plays Pokemon, but what I liked about Platinum, another thing, was that this time we really got to know the character. Napoleon Edgeworth, or aka Nipple. Basically, I can't get over the fact that we called him Nipple. So basically, we have this character named Napoleon, and basically, whereas trainers are usually like, oh, I love Pokemon, Napoleon was the complete opposite. He's to himself, he comes off as hating Pokemon, and he doesn't want anything to do with them, and no one really knows why. Well, one wonderful artist actually came up with a whole collection of comics about Napoleon, describing his past, and how he has always had the voices, and the voices have basically just turned him into this monster that he can't really take care of anything because he doesn't know how. But basically, as a kid, Napoleon only could relate to Pokemon. He always cared about them, always wanted to play with them, and blah 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 blah. And he meets this girl who lets him take home a Bidoof, but the Bidoof gets sick, which is funny because the Bidoof named Oreo was actually in our party for a while and did actually get either deposited or was released. I don't remember. But basically, you know, this Bidoof gets sick and he ends up dying, even though they take it to the Pokemon Center, and the girl's crying, and next thing you know, she's screaming at Napoleon saying, "How could someone like you ever love Pokemon?" And that kind of stuck with him after that, to the point where he didn't even want to touch Pokemon, he didn't even want to touch other people, he just kind of closed himself off and said he was, you know, convinced himself he was a monster. Then, when he, you know, found out he had the voices inside of his head, he avoided Pokemon even further, because I think he understood what the voices were, where they came from, and what they were known to do, as in killing fire Pokemon and just killing Pokemon in general. And so he didn't want to add that on to his past or his track record. And so he has this friend Pearl who's in some bit of trouble because of gambling debt, and he ends up trying to help his friend, and in the process he gets a Chimchar. And of course, because of the voices, he ends up getting his Chimchar killed, while normally it's the PC that murders this Pokemon. This artist took it upon themselves to say that a Staraptor had killed the Pokemon. And so basically Staraptor was going around killing Pokemon, and so the Chimchar ends up dying, even though it loved him and he loved it back secretly. And he was really torn up about that, so he quits his journey. But then last minute he sees this Bidoof getting attacked by a Staraptor, and it reminds him of his childhood. He rushes forward, gets attacked by this Staraptor, and ends up saving the Bidoof, which wasn't his. And next thing you know, he's in the Pokemon Center with a scar over his eye, a broken arm that's all bloodied and bandaged. And a girl comes by and she's like, "Oh, you saved Doofy, you know, thank you so much." And, you know, she basically says, you know, "You must really love Pokemon." And it looks exactly like the girl from his childhood. And that kind of redeems his hope in him being a great trainer. Plus, Pearl said he'll be a great trainer. Professor Rowan believes in him, and now he's starting to believe in himself too. So I really liked it that you take this character who has this dark past, who knows he loves Pokemon but can never take care of them properly, they always die, and slowly he's starting to redeem himself, and slowly he's starting to believe in himself. And it's a mixture of the voices being evil and the voices being good. Like, he has to just find his own balance. And I was really looking forward to this playthrough because of the distortion world, because Giratina is part of it, and just watching Twitch going through these puzzles is just absolutely, like, hilarious. It's just funny to me. I don't know, it's crazy. But yeah. So, I mean, what else can I say about it? It's a really, really good series, and, I mean, I keep watching it just because the lore is just addicting. Now, the thing is, like, I normally like, you know, things that do revolve around Pokemon, and I do really like the stories that they create, but really, I liked how they made an even balance with this. They really kind of took the story and they're like, okay, we are still going to have the Pokemon lore, we are still going to talk about them, but we also want to focus on the character himself, and that's something I can really appreciate, you know, because I do like knowing about the trainer, I do like knowing about their past. As someone that writes Pokemon fanfiction and someone that likes to put a story behind my own trainers, I can really appreciate someone delving deep into this character and trying to make sense of the story. So, as far as Pokemon canons went for this series, basically we had a Shinx that never evolved because bots kept telling her not to. Somehow we got a Badoo to evolve into a Roselia and then into a Roserade, which was nice. I'm trying to think of who else on our party. We had Happy Bat, which ended up being a Golbat, or no, Happy Bat got deposited, and we ended up getting a Golbat, which was known as Moonbat. And then we, of course, had our Flareon, which evolved from our Eevee. And then we had 006, which was our Bibarel, which was a female. And we had our Bronzor, which turned into Bronzong or whatever. I don't know, I can't remember the names for shit. But basically, Shinx, of course, called Sunshine, or Sparkles, whichever one you want to do. I call her Sunshine. We had her, Sunshine ended up having this canon with our Solarion. So Solarion and Sunshine fell in love, and they wanted to have a baby, but they couldn't mate, and so they used Bibarel so they could start their family, and, like, that's basically the only lore I know, other than Solarion saying, "I will beat the stereotype, I will be a fire Pokemon that'll be with you until the end," And yeah, and the fact that we managed to keep a Shinx throughout the whole playthrough, even though at some point all of her attack moves were erased, like, that was just amazing in itself. But the Pokemon canon, you know, other than Solarion and Shinx, really, like, just the Pokemon lore in general in this, to me, was pretty low. I wasn't really as interested in it, and I was always wanting to find out more about Napoleon himself, and of course about his adventures and how he was growing as a trainer. I know that at one point he ended up, I think we killed Giratina, we fainted Giratina, we ran away, and then we ended up fainting another legendary instead of trying to catch him. And we ended up running away from one Pokemon by using a Pokédoll, which I remember was huge in the story development because he was like, you know, it was the legendary Pokemon I guess Napoleon had been wanting to catch since the beginning, since it was for his friend. And basically he ended up throwing the Pokédoll at it, saying, I'll let you go back to sleep. I won't bother you anymore, you know, I'm sorry. And that was basically a turning moment for him, because instead of making all the Pokemon faint, he was starting to appreciate Pokemon more, he was starting to get control of himself, and show his love for Pokemon, so he gave it a Pokédoll so that he could sleep with it for the rest of its life, you know, cuddle up next to it and curl up and be all dreamy. So that was a thing, and I don't know, like I said, just most of it revolved around the trainer itself this time, not really around the Pokemon. Stuff with the Pokemon was pretty interesting, but honestly, what it all came down to was I was reading the subreddit just to find out about Napoleon, not really about the Pokemon itself. So yeah, so that was basically my thing with this whole Twitch Plays Pokemon whatnot. Which is really just, like I said, it's always fun to watch, it's always fun to get into. It's never too late to get into it. Once you start with, you know, one part of it, you can always look back, and you can play the save files from other games, you can watch it on YouTube. Like, there's no way you can really miss out if you take the time to research it, take the time to watch it. There are people that do day by day highlights, which means you don't even have to watch the full game being played, you just listen to the highlights, learn what's been going on, look up the memes. Like, you can get involved in this wonderful community if you choose to. It's just, it wouldn't really take that much time, and it's definitely worth it, especially if you love Pokemon, and especially if you just love Pokemon-related shenanigans, just memes in general, and funny stuff. But that's basically all I can say about Platinum. I will go ahead and extend this video so that you can watch it all the way to the end, so you can watch them defeat the E4. I should start doing this for every series, just because I think it's interesting. It's just I haven't before, just because this footage was not taken by me. I did pull it from somewhere else, but the final battle, I was like, oh my god, are they going to be able to do it? Like, for me, it's heart-pounding, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it on here for this, for you guys, so you can watch. If you haven't seen it already, if you are followers of Twitch and you didn't get to see it, well, here you go, you're welcome. So anyways, right now they're playing a randomized Heart Gold version, which is actually pretty cool. We already have a Groudon, which I think is really awesome. But yeah, but I'll go ahead and save the details until we finish it, and then I'll go ahead and talk about the highlights of all those things instead of doing an intro to it and then an outro to it. I'm just going to go ahead and let the series finish itself. So if you haven't realized already, like I just said, we're playing a randomized Heart Gold right now on twitchplayspokemon.net. Go ahead and check it out if you want to get into the Twitch thing. It's definitely worth it. Next we'll be playing either Black or White version, and then of course we'll play Black and White 2, and then we'll move on to X and Y most likely, if we can, and then of course we might even move on to Omega Ruby or Alpha Sapphire, who knows. That would be fun to watch. Most likely those would be randomized. But yeah, so go ahead and hit like if you like this video. Thumbs up for the new intro. I hope you like it better than the other one. It is much shorter. So everybody's been complaining about my intro, so I've decided to change it. And yeah, other than that, go ahead and leave a comment down below. Let me know what your favorite parts of Pokemon Platinum were. Just your favorite Pokemon lore, Napoleon lore, anything. The fact that Bill really wasn't very apparent in this, which was really nice for once. And shenanigans with Dome and Helix and blah. I was actually kind of glad that those were there, because I think they're starting to get a little overused. So just go ahead and tell me in the comments down below what you think, what you would have liked to have seen, what you liked, just in general, your favorite battle, your favorite moment, whatever. Let's just start a conversation. How about it? But yeah. So if you haven't already, like I said, like, comment, feel free to subscribe, check me out online if you want to. My website is in my outro. And yeah, so this has been Sam Atari talking about Twitch Plays Pokemon Platinum. It's a tongue twister. Anyways, I am out. I'll talk to you guys later. Alright, ciao!